Hi, welcome to another episode of Hot Takes. And it turns out, much to everybody's surprise, that the SNP haven't been entirely honest. I know. Shocking, isn't it? In the dark days after Humza Yousaf basically threw the Greens overboard, much to everyone's surprise and the anger of the Greens, it turns out that his whole regime itself was failing. It was turning into an absolute shower of shite. Well, they needed success. And so they rushed out news and this and that and told people things and listed 9 wonderful Humza Yousaf successes. Only that's not entirely where the truth lies, because it turns out of those 9, 5 of them, over half of them, were in fact failures. Now, it doesn't matter how much spin you put on it. It doesn't matter how much you polish a story. You can't polish a turd. You can at least 5 times, it seems, roll it in glitter and pretend it's better than it is. And that's what we ended up with, 5 glittery turds of policies that they were trying to pass off as successes. But they now need to do this reality check because his disastrous, awful, terrible tenure as First Minister, when it finally came to an end, thank heavens, laid the way for yet more failure. Indeed, there has been no single success since he left, and he had very little while he was there. But as he was fighting for his job, the Scottish Government kept trying to push him and show what a great guy he was doing, what a fantastic job he was doing. And of course, it was doing absolutely nothing. And they kept spinning it and they kept pushing it out in the press. But I need to go through these. Now, I have to read them because there's no way I'm going to remember all of these. But he said, or the Scottish Government said, the Scottish Government is investing record amounts in our NHS, ensuring it can employ record numbers of staff, deliver the best performing A&E units in the UK. Scotland is the only part of the UK to avoid pay-related strike action in our NHS. And then it turns out that that's not entirely true. And indeed, they aren't paying the most ever recorded amounts into the NHS. Year on year, with inflation, they're actually paying lower now than they did relatively at the start 17 years ago. And as for record numbers of staff, well, they've got record numbers of staff vacancies, so you can make of that what you want. And as for the best performing A&E units in the UK, not so much. They're the worst. And so, yes, that's a pile of crap. Number 1, out of the way. They said, Scottish Government has delivered a council tax freeze this year in every local authority, helping families where we can with the cost of living. Scottish ministers have removed peak fares on our railways, and this month the Scottish Government approved plans for Europe's largest floating offshore wind farm. Let's have a look at that line then. Certainly, peak fares are back. Woohoo! That didn't last long. That one's been abandoned. And as for helping families with the cost of living, not so much. Just because you've frozen council tax by, say, £5 or £10 a month doesn't do much when food prices are inflating beyond all measure and taxes were raised. And as for plans for Europe's largest floating offshore wind farm, oh dearie, dearie me, it's an absolute failure. It's not looking very good. And the ones that are already there have already been sold off way, way cheaper than they should have been. So that one is something they need to sweep under the carpet and never mention again. He said, average earnings in Scotland are forecast to grow faster than the rest of the UK. Attainment is at a record high and record numbers of students from deprived areas are entering university. And the Scottish Government policies are lifting an estimated 100,000 children out of poverty this year. Again, where do we start? Average earnings in Scotland are not growing faster than the rest of the UK. They're falling. Attainment is record high. No, the education standards in Scotland are falling faster. They're now lower than some third world countries and still falling. They refuse now to even publish them because they're so embarrassed. Record numbers of students from deprived areas are entering university. Again, that's there's a technical term for that, and that's a lie. And this one, the 100,000 children out of poverty, has been debunked more times than a soldier. It is absolute rubbish. It is being shown to be false information time and time again. And so these statements that they keep pushing out, it's all rubbish. It's all bullshit. It's all spin. Half of the things never happened. Some of them were lies, and some of them have since been cancelled because they were just stupidly bad. And of course, they still need to make him out to be some kind of great leader because this is the SNP. They never have failures. They never have anything other than perfect record on everything. And so even the things he's failed at, they can't acknowledge because otherwise they've had to acknowledge that they put the wrong man in. Twice now. And they're about to compound it by putting the wrong man in for the third time. But they're all there. And of course, this is just fodder, isn't it, for the opposition? What a load of old rubbish. Craig Hoy, he's been there saying Humza Yousaf lives in clown world. He looks back, he says he must look at his brief and think, oh, what a wonderful time. He says it's time that Humza Yousaf took off his rose-tinted glasses and addressed the issues. He says crime has soared, NHS waiting times have skyrocketed, and the economy is collapsing. And mostly, of course, due to Humza and his policies. And for some reason at the beginning, certainly, his love of the Greens. It didn't help, of course, when he hung around and kept old Matheson there for far, far too long. That's really what destroyed him in the end, of course. But he said Humza Yousaf and his SNP colleagues need an absolute reality check. They should stop wasting time on fringe obsessions and concentrate on the issues that matter to Scots' everyday lives. They won't do that because the issues that matter to Scots' everyday lives are problems that they themselves, the SNP, have caused and are quite incapable of solving. They just don't have the skills or the talent or the knowledge or the expertise or the experience or the qualifications. But mostly they don't have the money. They've wagged it all away on independence. The SNP and the Scottish Government have been approached for comment, but comment came there none. They ain't going to respond to this. What do they say? Yes, you're quite right. We failed. We failed at everything. Everything's going wrong. You're perfectly right. They're never going to say that because, hey, it's the SNP. But there we go. When you elect into power people ill-suited for the job, what do you expect? I mean, they had to pull the stake out of Swinny's heart, and pour the blood of a virgin on his lips to resurrect him and put him back in power. He was ready to go. He was ready to resign. And now look at him. He's somehow aged even more being in the role. He's a broken man. And they're still having him there hanging on while they can change the rules or get Flynn up. They don't know how to do that either. They're not likely to put Flynn up in a by-election that they're not likely to win either because they don't want to embarrass him. So what are you going to do? Wait for the safest seat in Scotland for the SNP to put Flynn in it? That MSP doesn't want to leave, does he? It's bad. But then what do? I don't care. I mean, the whole SNP is falling apart. But it isn't just Humza Yousaf's tenure that's failure. Let's face it, Swinney is worse. Thanks a lot. Bye.